a band. You hear it?
It is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. The sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current, which are directly proportional to the variations in the light beam. The sound track. As the varying electrical current in the photoelectric cell is small, a vacuum tube amplifier is required to increase it to the point where it will operate a loudspeaker. Sound track.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Occult Rejects. Today, as you can see, this is part 2 to the Chakra series that I am doing with Louis from Uncannymysticminds and Teresa from Spiritual Gangsters. Definitely a fun series. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. Hope that you all caught the first one. If you didn't, I would suggest to go back. Because a decent part of the first episode was even kind of just breaking down like the idea of the chakras and what that all is. A little bit of symbolism for the tree and other things and with Kabbalah. So I would suggest to go back and check that one out before you continue listening on this one. Real quick, before we do go forward, I want to let my guests say what's up and plug their other shows. Louis, if you don't mind, I'll let you go first.
Hey, what's up, guys? Glad to be on again. My name's Louis from Uncannymysticminds podcast, and I'm looking forward to continuing this series for the chakras because the chakras have a soft spot for me in my journey that I've freaking been in. It's I've freaking incorporated a lot of healing stuff, and I've learned a lot through the chakras. So yeah, I got a soft spot for it.
Yeah, no, me too. And you know what's funny? I feel like even when it came to me practicing magic or meditation, I did actually focus on a lot on the chakras. And it was almost like something you're if you were a dude, it's it wasn't even something you really talked about.
Yeah.
I feel like, how do you talk to your other boy who's doing the Star Ruby about chakras? Unless they bring it up first.
I need to adjust my chakras. My chakras are blocked. Can you help me unblock them?
But then the thing is, honestly, in my opinion, a real magician would actually understand the importance of them anyway. So,
yeah.
But it is funny how it's something that is it's almost like a guilty pleasure. It's oh, is that something I should even mention? But yeah, I do think
internal.
They're very important.
It's internal, and so it's it's more secluded. You know what I mean? So it's not something tangible where you could share it with someone. Be hey, can you see my chakra? You know what I mean? Because odds are they probably can.
And you know what I think has also helped maybe ruin the ideas of them too. It's been so woo-wooed and so capitalized on. That's sometimes I think some people kind of look at it and just be it's a fucking some silly new age shit. Because you got some silly person trying to sell you something to do with it. You just discredit the whole thing.
Yeah, it got hella commercialized, and then it got hyped out, got hella neo-hippied out and all these things. And so I mean that comes with the territory with all this stuff.
That is
a little bit.
That is very true. That is very true. And me and Louis just kept on running on, but Teresa, would you like to introduce yourself?
It's okay. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Thanks for having me on this one.
Of course.
Yeah, so I'm from the Spiritual Gangsters. I also co-host NY Patriot show sometimes with you.
Most of the time now.
Most of the time now, that's true. But yeah, chakras is really important to me also because as I mentioned on the last episode, I do have a background in yoga. And I studied yoga for 10 years. So yeah, chakras are obviously integral to that. So it's when you practice yoga, you're automatically working those energy centers anyway. It's not really always intentional, but you can, of course, focus on one more than the other or meditate on them. And it is really important to me also. And I find when I neglect that, I do see a difference in my physical well-being. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, going forward now, because of the last episode being so long, and I did not want it to be like 2.5 hours. I thought that would have been a little bit too long. I am tossing in the sacral chakra. That was the end of part 1. I'm going to toss that in. Nobody would even have noticed if I didn't do video. So I have to say something.
Right.
I could have easily spliced it in so nicely with audio, and nobody would even have known. But because there is video, I have to bring it up that you'll be seeing a scenery change. We're doing the sacral chakra from part 1. I'm going to splice that in now, and then after that, we will continue on to the third chakra. Chakra 2. It goes water, change, polarities, movement, pleasure, emotions, sexuality, nurturance, and clairsentience. The Sanskrit name, do you know that one? I'm going to screw this up.
I think it's Svadhisthana chakra.
Yes, I was going to say
Svadhisthana chakra.
Yes,
Yeah,
Svadhisthana.
it's a hard one.
Sweetness could be a meaning. Element water, the location, lower abdomen, genitals, or womb. Womb is quite fitting, especially since it goes along with water. Yes. Function, desire, pleasure, sexuality, procreation. Other body parts, wombs, genitals, kidney, bladder, circulatory system. Color, orange. Sense, taste. The sound for this one is vam. And then vowel sound, oo as in do. The tarot suit would be the cups. The sephira would be Yesod, which is the moon. The celestial body, according to this, is the moon. And the metal would be tin. And the food would be liquids. Petals, 6. Animals, fish, and sea creatures. Some of the gods that can be associated with it: Diana, Tiamat, Dionysus, Pan. They have on there. I don't know. I put that more with first.
Pan is very sexual, so that makes sense.
But I guess
fertility.
Fertility.
Yeah.
Which is of this world. That's hard to explain.
Because I always had Pan and Jupiter together, so I think that kind of.
Well, a lot of times Crowley would use Pan because he's very much of neither being like almost like Odin is like the All Father, or then very much God of this world in itself too. So that's why I saw him a little bit lower, I guess. Just thinking of like fully in this world. Archangel Gabriel, chief operating force, attraction of opposites. And which is funny is that even on the Tree of Life, when it hits the moon, that is a sphere of 2 other ones connecting. It is an attraction of opposites. And then the birth comes into Earth.
Oh.
Yeah. Real quick, some things I just do want to read off real fast. I forgot to do it with the first one. It is here that our initial unity becomes duality. Our point becomes a line. Real quick, I do think, like, this is just my opinion when it gets into the whole moon matrix. I think Yesod is where the programming comes in of the different sexualities, and then they are actually birthed into physical form, in a sense, through Yesod. So I can see how it's going again with duality. Unity becomes duality. Our point becomes a line, giving it direction, dividing one side from another. Remove from element of earth to that of water, where solid becomes liquid, stillness becomes movement, form becomes formless. We have gained a degree of freedom, but also more complexity. Our consciousness moves from a feeling of unity to the realization of difference. Our understanding of self now includes an awareness of the other. Connecting with another, desire arises, and with it our emotions and sexuality. We long to unite, to overcome our separateness, but to reach out and grow. These are all aspects of consciousness at the second chakra, all which induce change. Something that I do want to also add real quick with like the whole water thing. even if you kind of like look at this and like look at the way it makes it sound like just breaking out of that first one, again, you have water as a symbol is going into like a new consciousness or a new, what did it say here? Our understanding of self, like just like that whole new thing. Again, like it's even showing water as a symbol of like, breaking away and going up to something new.
Yeah.
Like again, I'm not saying that that's the abyss, but even again, when it comes to the Kabbalah, I do, like I've said before, I think there's multiple ways of looking at that. I think one of the ways of looking at it is that when you hit the moon, you're already leaving the matrix. So again, like, does that again go along with the water? Because then if you want to start thinking about, depending on how some people look at it, as above, so below, if you believe in a dome, I'm guessing if you kind of believe that there is a firmament, maybe you're hitting that outside once you get around the moon. So is there technically waters in a sense there again? So
Water's above and water's below.
yes, exactly.
Right,
So
yeah.
like I could even see that going along with my idea of breaking out of the matrix when you're hitting your sod.
Yeah. Well, in what I had looked up, that chakra, the sacral chakra, is also called the dwelling place of the self. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it's where the self gets actualized.
Yes,
Because,
real quick, I'm sorry, then you can go, Louis. I just want to add to that real quick. That's even like the images, the machine of images. When I cover this in the Kabbalah, that is what the Yesod is, or the moon is. So it's even like it's the image of self, like you just said.
Yeah, it's where it the self gets actualized, and then that's because you're able to distinguish what's outside like another. And so that's why there's this interaction, this interplay with like the moon and the water, because there's like the ebb and flow, the tides pulling in and out. And then that's tied to like sexuality, where there's an in and out of an inter exchange, right? And then so and then because in an exchange like that, in a sexual exchange, there's the opposite. How you were just saying, there's the opposite, right? So you're aware of an opposite, and so if you're aware of an opposite, you're aware of yourself. So you're self-actualizing yourself. And then so that's where you learn to be like, there's a process of learning to be comfortable in your own skin. You know what I mean? Because how we said earlier in the red one, it's like primal, like the primal one, he can't see, like he can't see it. Like he just is that. Like, so there's no distinguishing that. Like he just is that. Like the dog just barks. Like he just is that. There's no distinguishing if he could do, like a moo or whatever the hell, right? And then so this is where you learn about your like the self like that. And then so therefore boundaries, like that's why boundaries are important, because in this one you learn to be fluid with duality. So then you have to learn.
Sometimes you have to put up your own boundaries just to regulate your own emotions.
Yeah, and this is the one of emotions. Just how the red one was the one of physicality and physical needs, right? This one is like the emotional needs.
Again,
right?
if you real quick, just to think about it, all this stuff, again, if you start going from the mind down, if you go from the top down, your emotions are going to be dictating your actions, which is what I think the root chakra really is showing, your actions from the previous things. And the next previous one, emotions.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the TV does. Shows you stuff on TV, and then you get emotions out in the street burning down buildings.
Yeah. And it's tied to water. The element of this one, and so, and then remember, like in our planetary series, we're making jokes about how like Zeus is like a freak and all that stuff, because this is where all those exchanges of all that stuff happens. And what happens when you have an excess of the orange chakra is that you'll end up probably getting bad habits of people that are looking to fill this passion, this urge that they have, because this is where like the passion stuff comes from. And then so people can get into like quote unquote bad habits if they're like, I'm imagining the color must be like more of like a bright orange, like damn near neon, because kind of like how there was pale red, I think the balanced one of this is pale orange, because when you have an excess, it can either probably get too bright orange, like neon, or maybe muddied, or maybe
we'll start
muddied,
getting
like
closer to red,
orange.
actually.
Yeah.
Orange man mad.
It'll get darker. It'll get something. Yeah. And then so you kind of have to be aware of this one, because because you can fall into some stuff where you're trying to manipulate energy from someone, like you're just kind of use them, like you could be like using people and stuff like that. Or
Well,
the
yeah,
other
you're
one
going
is
to act on your emotions and you're just going to feel and get what you want. Feel better.
Or the other half is you'll get manipulated by not putting up your boundaries. You know what I mean? So then,
well, yeah, that's normally the emotions.
that's the opposite one. Yeah, where you didn't put up like you didn't put a defense, and then you can get manipulated like that too.
Yeah, no, totally. Normally, I do think that most of our emotions that we feel comes from being manipulated in the first place.
Yeah, and then that stuff is it's like stored in your sacrum, and then so that's why some people will have like that crazy like those back problems. You know what I mean? Like where like
sciatica.
And like your lumbar is just like immovable. You know, I must have had hella shit with that too, and then like your hips will be super tight. Because some years ago when I started getting into yoga, it was like, oh my God, like even now I still work on my sacrum all the time. Like that stuff is from like I guess the like the lower the chakra is like from more older. So like from starting from the womb to when you first come out onto the ground to the earth, and then the first couple of years after that, you're storing this other stuff in your sacrum a lot, like in the sacral, and then so it's like a lot of emotional stuff, and then later on.
Yeah, well, even think about like when people just let stuff build up, and then you flip out.
Yeah.
You let your emotions build up until you act it out like insane. You know.
Even when you're stressed, like often, physically you'll be more bloated or like irritable, like all that relates back to water, right?
Yeah.
And what did you say the vowel was and why? Oo, as in do?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to relate that to like prenatal yoga and like birth. So when a woman is in labor, they encourage, I learned this in prenatal yoga, encourage you to make like vowel sounds instead of like screaming, through the pain. So to ride the contraction with like an oo sound or like an o sound, because those are like the lower chakra frequency sounds. So that will help in like relaxing and like opening the area to give birth more quickly and easily. Yeah. As opposed to like tightening.
There's even when you start getting into like certain even things being said in magic, and I think it might be like even the tetragrammatron. I'm screwing this all up. I don't have a drink with me. I'm like starting to get cotton mouth. I'm so dry.
Me too.
Yeah. The oohs and ahs, like those actually, like I will use Pink Floyd and David Bowie. David Bowie for sure, and I've even seen people cover it on the Black Star. Oohs and ahs are different elements, different emotions, good and bad, and Pink Floyd does that a lot in their music. I do think there is something behind the oohs and ahs sound. Believe it or not.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And there was a thing I did want to mention real quick. And you had mentioned it before, Louis, the whole like reflection and stuff. I do think like even, with the tree, if you want to go by like how it goes, even with like, symbols and experiences, this second sphere, you're kind of basically, I'll word it this way, you're coming face to face with the creator. And basically now if you're coming down the tree, basically the creator became conscious of itself and then made an image of itself. And then that falls down the tree mentally. Then it comes down, gets a little bit more programmed, sex gets involved, names, labels, all of this stuff. And then you finally make it to the moon. And then that finally is a reflection of the creator that fell from grace, in a sense, and decided to come into form finally. So like there is times like 2 reflects into 4. 4 will then be the male energy, the king, and then when that has another reflection of self, it becomes the prince. And then the prince has another reflection of self, and then eventually has the birth with the maiden and the princess, and then creates another image of itself, and then you're finally birthed out into this world. That is really going by like the Kabbalah, but like even again, like all of that stuff really is emotions, because of things that happened or changes or things that you came into. You start coming into ideas of self. You start tossing in labels, you know, and then that eventually manifests, and then you're really birthed into that. But and I know that was long and drawn out and very, you know, probably out there, but I do like really think that like the tree is just multiple reflections, and like the moon really is like the final last, you know, due to everything else, and then the emotions finally make the meat suit that you finally come into form into, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like with the ebb and flow, it's like I think about like there's like the rhythm of the water, like, right? So that's like it could be hypnotic and trancing, right? And then that's why people like to dance like that too. And then so I think that this is where like if you learn the cycles of the flow of the ebbs and flow and the rhythm, that's where you learn about manipulation. And then so in terms of like magic like that, where people manipulate it for bad reasons, like they use the rhythm, they know about timings of rhythms, and then that also plays a big part into that stuff. And like this chakra, this is the beginning of where you get entranced in, you know what I mean? And then that's how you can get like lost in a spell, like when you're like whoa, 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 and then like you got caught up in the trance of the rhythm. Like here was where that got enabled. So that's how some people could fall for things, you know, like too much like sex, you know, like this is like where like, you know, the gonads get all the action, you know what I mean? And so
yeah, well, again, like even I do think, you know, when you want to get back to even magic or even our creation or how we even came to existence, I do think you can break it down strictly to electric and magnetism. You're just pulling something away from the path and taking it away from the way it was supposed to be going. Even as you start coming down the tree, one of the top cards is the Lover's card. Depending on what deck you're using, sometimes it literally looks like the damsel in distress. That is the electric energy getting pulled off of the direction it should be going into towards the magnet.
yeah,
You know, you're being taken away from your path of where you should be going because, you know, you're just being pulled away. You're being taken, exactly what you were saying. You're just being pulled away where you should be going.
yeah,
And that happening multiple times, back and forth, bouncing around like a pinball machine, gets us to this screwed up place we are now.
yeah. and there's an inherent tranciness and hypnoticness to it, you know what I mean, that enables a seduction, you know what I mean. But yeah, so it's like I think it's like the primal version or like a primal aspect of the seduction like that, where later on you learn, you know, with the heart chakra, like you can pull those strings. But I think it starts with the orange one first. And it's funny that they both have a common denominator of yellow, because one is like blue and yellow, which is green, and then the other one is, you know, with red. And so they're just polar versions, but they still have that hypnotic-y thing to them where they can pull on you like that and get you tranced out. And there's like some kind of dichotomy and oxymoron with this chakra, because it's like where duality gets introduced, and then you have to learn that it's like you end up coming to grips with duality, that it's something but it's also nothing. Like it's also like you don't, like you need it but you also don't need it. It's like it's like this weird oxymoron. And then so
actually, I think when I get to the end of the series and when I told you about the thing that I was going to try to show with the spheres, the chakras and everything, I think this will actually make a lot more sense when I get to that too, with what I'm trying to get
sure.
at. Because again, I do think it matches up with your third eye. So, you know, and that is something that I did say I wanted to include before we start wrapping this up. This has already been 2 hours, but I had assumed that these are probably all going to be about an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Be a 3-part series. But I did want to also mention, you know, again, the whole thing of like chakras being very important. And this is just, you know, my experience with being in a secret society when I was in the OTO. Fuck it, it was one of the initiations. Not gonna say which one, but they will take like kind of like a sword, and they will smack your waist area. And there is a time, I don't know if it's them or you're doing it, it's something to do with your third eye too. I can't remember how it gets tapped or touched or whatever. But there is a moment where those both will be hit. I did not think anything of it really, especially the waist one, because I thought that just caught my attention. Or I thought it was like something to startle you, because there are things I think are just done just to like kind of like keep you on edge. You know, after you do these things, there are classes you can go to where they will go a little bit deeper into what they think, the people who ran it think, you know, it's about. regardless if they're correct or whatever. It's the whole other story. But they did come out and legit tell us that was done to activate your chakras.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously these places do consider these things important.
It was like they were trying to do some kind of like psychic activation, because over here we know with the third eye, that's the like the vision of seeing, like psychic. And then with the sacral, that's like the beginning of, like, that's where you have the gut intuition, right? Because like that's where it all starts. Because if you don't have a gut intuition, you're never going to be able to have that vision version of intuition. You know what I mean? So they're definitely tied, and they're like psychic centers, you know, like, and it's funny because they have organs like here, you have the brain, and then your stomach is like a big old like organ too. It's its own brain, I've heard.
Your heart even has brain shit on it too. So.
Yeah. And then like they're freaking responsible for like a lot of intuition.
That's even, I'm going to be totally honest with you, that's even been a thought in my mind to an extent of like, oh, those parts that you need to cut off. Those parts of the brain that's in your stomach and maybe the ones in the heart, and you actually just need to sync these, you know, or the heart needs to sync up with here, and you need to cut off the lower part too.
No, I think you have to, I think it's about temperance. Like you have to temper the fire. It's like a balance. You have to, it's like you have to keep it, but you have to like kind of fend it off so it doesn't blow. Like you have to have it at just the right thing or something like that. Yeah.
I do think there has to be something, at least, if not turning off, syncing all of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No,
which actually, I do believe actually does form the cross.
Manipulation for sure.
Because there is a syncing of going down with things, and then you need to sync your head. So technically, you have a line of syncage this way and down this way. I mean, you're getting across there, too.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's like some kind of like they're correlated, and like they have like their relationship where they're all different. Like they all have their separateness, but then they're all tied in the same one freaking snake or whatever the hell you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all part of the snake that's going up.
Yeah. So like going back to like the very beginning when we talked about, you know, intercellular communication and stuff and electromagnetism, when our frequencies are messed around with, our cells are not able to communicate effectively. So we get literally compartmentalized, like you were saying. So our chakra can't communicate with the other one properly. And that brings on a whole host of health problems and mental problems, etc. Right? So keeping you separate, right? It's a microcosm. And then what we see like in the outer world right now, like in society, has never been more divided. And they compartmentalize us into these boxes and labels constantly. So that's like the macrocosm, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, because it'll end up hitting our different moods. Like when your sacral is out, you know what I mean? You can have that chronic guilt. You can be a people pleasing or very impulsive, like very trying to get like something that you think you really need. You know what I mean? So, and then they all kind of will reflect out, you know? So yeah, it's a good thing to like get to kind of get to know just how that stuff works. Cause then you'll kind of decode yourself. You're like, oh, okay. Like I can figure my shit out. Like, you know, it's a good tool for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any poses you wanted to go over before I?
Sure. So like poses.
Sorry.
Yes, poses that can help balance your sacral chakra are. Let me see my list here. Crow pose, which is really hard. Triangle pose, Ustrasana, which is camel pose, cat and cow. So you know that when you're on all fours and you're bending your spine, like concave and convex.
What's the odds of camel and cat both used for sexual chakra?
Right.
Come on.
Also bound angle pose, which is like when you're lying down and your legs are in like a diamond. There's that one. And Paschimottanasana, which is where you just bend over when you're seated and grab your toes. And Virabhadrasana 2, which is Warrior 2, the one where you see like.
Mm-hmm. So funny, people probably like just bend over and grab your toes like it's not that easy.
Yeah.
Especially when you start getting our age.
Yeah. It's funny because now I'm looking
and to
at
hold
the
it.
List. Yeah. I'm looking at the list and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's a lot of with legs like in a diamond or like open.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Because one of the last ones is wide-legged forward bend. So you'd be standing wide and then hinge forward at the hips.
No, it's like all about how you hold the pose, and then that stuff is really good because you got all that wide leg, like that's like your hip flexors. That's like to open up your hips and all.
Totally, yeah, absolutely.
And
Works the hips for sure.
On the waist. And, yeah, man, it's like a lot of creativity. You know what I mean? Because you know how like
emotions can help that too. Actually,
yeah. And like how we keep talking about sex. Well, what's sex do? What is the byproduct of that? A creation. You make a creation, right? So creativity, creation, like it's tied to that for sure. Too.
Yeah, whether it's a baby or like other things in your life, like you get more creative, I think, when that is more open, but still in balance, right? Yeah,
and then a lot of your passion comes from that, and then you're able to distinguish what that is compared to you because you're like, oh, I made that. That's separate than me. So it's like your introduction to the separateness, to something of that concept.
Totally.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Right on.
So, Louis, you're all right if we start off Chakra 3? You want to start off that one yourself?
Yeah. Let's let it rip. Yeah, so the solar plexus is the third chakra. So typically it's yellow. I learned from Stuart Swerdlow. I like to say pale yellow because when I think of pale yellow with those chakras, especially with the first three, which are like the physical chakras. So the solar plexus is like the end of the physicality chakra. And then once you get to the next one, that's when it starts to bridge and border onto different things like spiritual. But so it's the last of the physical. And then I like pale because I think about it incorporates like the neutrality. So neutral is good for the chakras, right? Like you don't want it like excess or you don't want it like not enough. And then so because I think if you have excess, it might be like too bright of a yellow. And then if you have not enough, it'll be like a super faded where you can barely tell a yellow. So I like pale. I like pale yellow.
You know what? I think I have in my head sometimes when I do think of the chakras myself too, I think of it more of a pastel color.
Yeah.
Where it's really not as bright, but it's,
not super saturated.
It's like there's like a softness. There's like a softness to it where it's not like officially like a Crayola yellow type of thing. I guess there's like a softness or whatever. And I guess so depending on how fast the thing is spinning, like that's like the light that it emits or whatever. So for the root, you got it's like your inner needs like a lot of nervous system stuff. So you have to establish that first before you get to anything else, because if not, it'll be out of whack. Then it's like with the second one, with the sacral, you start to feel a relationship like kind of like a push and a pull. So maybe between you and the universe or you and something else, but it's kind of abstract. Okay. It's like the acknowledgement of you and something else. So the cool thing about the solar plexus is that after you establish that ebb and flow or that push and pull of you and the universe of deciphering duality, then the solar plexus starts to refine its identity. So it's like, that's why like how we talked about before with planets is like the refined fire as opposed to Aries, which was like a explosion bomb. It's like refined after you figured out duality and how do you stand with duality? What's your take on duality? What are your characteristics that you want for yourself? You know what I mean? That you take all for you. And then that's why, because if it's all for yourself, that's why like ego and pride kind of also come from this. So it's like
I can see that.
This is like where a fine line with all this shit is, but that's kind of where it starts, where you start to build up your own characteristics and then like the decisions that you want to make for yourself, and so that's based off of like the ego too, so
I think you kind of like said something along this lines about like I guess like the root chakra and then like the sacral, that's very much still in the physical. I do feel like with the solar plexus, as you start to move up, that I mean, I guess with pride and ego, that you still could be, I guess, maybe consuming a lot of stuff, earthly things, buying things, having fancy shit, thinking you're hot stuff or whatever. But I do think like that one is also like very, I think it's less maybe material and more in like you're starting to get into like thoughts and feelings. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
too, as you're rising up. Because like what you were saying, like with the pride and the ego, I mean, you could look like an average everyday person who doesn't live among their means, but up in your head, I mean, you could think you're king shit still. So like you don't have to look like you're oozing with ego, but have it going on in your head.
Yeah, because it's where ideals get established. because you have to establish that, because like in the prior chakra, like you're just establishing the concept of duality, the concept of a push and a pull, of an ebb and a flow. And then for that one, it like you could literally have your eyes closed and not know what it is. It's just like the feeling of you, like self, and of other. You know what I mean? And then so it's very abstract. And then so once you start to get past that, you can start to see and your ideals that you want to take from that relationship. And so that's why everyone's ego is different, because everyone has a different relationship with how they feel between the push and pull of life. You know what I mean? Some people, they feel like they get pushed around all day. Some people like to be bullies and they want to be on the opposite side. And then there's always the people in between, and there's degrees of that shit. So, and so it's all unique like that.
I think even like what we've talked about prior with the other chakras, it's even like how I how even the spheres on the tree of life and the Kabbalah kind of go. There is a vice and a virtue, and I could see that as a push and a pull in a sense as well. And I do think they're like, even with each chakra, there is like the kind of the good part that will let you go up to the next one, or the vice to that, which brings you back down. You know what I'm saying? Or starts feeding the other ones, almost kind of like those waterfalls. It fills a little bit too much, goes to the next one. Or fills up a little bit too much, goes to the next one.
Yeah. Because if you're a consumer, then you're gonna go maybe on the right, and then if you're clockwise, and then maybe if you're not consuming enough of yourself, of your pride, like you got to take pride in your work, take pride in yourself. That's the beginning of self-esteem. You know what I mean? And then so it'll go left. It'll probably go counterclockwise.
It's like going down. It's like every time the cup overfills, the Scarlet Horse just got another one to catch more of it with. We can keep going down, but going up is a little bit different, I think. But
yeah, well, I like what you guys are saying about how this in the solar plexus is where we start to see like more development of the ego too, because it is very much associated with like digestion actually, and like the element of fire. So it is considered like the second brain. You know how like a lot of new nutrition science is saying that like your gut is actually your second brain.
Yes.
And it controls like so much of your mood and anxiety, and like depression, mental illness is very much linked to like your gut bacteria, your flora, like all this stuff. So I feel like the solar plexus is very much tied to that. And being like a fire element, it's responsible for a lot of the digestive process as well. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Also too, like it's responsible for like transferring food into energy that your body can use, right?
Yeah.
So when it is blocked, like it can lead to like liver problems, digestive disorders, like eating disorders, diabetes, all kinds of stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah, because the gut is like the second brain, and then like intuition, that's like the beginning of the intuition, and then like where I think it ends here later on, like in the third eye kind of stuff. But this is the beginning, like in terms of like the primal intuition is definitely right there, like in the gut for sure, because it's a hunch, like it's either yes or no, like it's not so much a vision, but it's more of like a feeling, like an abstract feeling, like how there was a push and pull and yes and no. Yeah. So it's definitely like that for sure.
I've even wondered, I think it was after the last time we recorded, or I don't know, I'm thinking it was then. Something was brought up about like I think the stomach again with like would you say brain tissue before or something like that?
Oh, just that like the gut is related to the brain function.
Yeah. I was, I have been wondering now, like if there is like separations and things that need to connect that. I used to think just the heart and the brain. I'm thinking like I'm wondering like if the digestive, like if that needs if there's
for sure.
Yeah, the more and more science is coming out all the time, like how important like your gut is to your
gut
mental function.
And
like
the funny
to your mental health.
I could totally be wrong, but like I can't even remember correctly, but I do think in the Gnostic Mass there is 3 slices, and I've thought of like the brain and the heart being 2 of them possibly, and I was just like, what the fuck is the third one? I could still be wrong, but like maybe that is it, Probably. Who knows? I mean, I doubt I'm figuring out, Crowley that well, so I'm probably wrong.
I found it interesting. Like just because I did a lot of my yoga studies in like prenatal yoga, so like dealing with like pregnancy and then
Mm.
like post pregnancy, and that like a lot of women struggle with like body stuff post pregnancy because like you've gone through like all this massive change, and after birth your core is extremely weak, like
Yeah.
extremely. So I found that interesting when you said, Louis, like, working on core stuff. I'm like, is that why like pregnant or post pregnant mothers, like, they just are so messed up about their body and often, not always, but like have a lot
Damn
hard
near
time
most of the time.
accepting body stuff after children?
Yeah. Think
It's
about
your
what. Yeah. Think about where you just blew your wad. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And then so like we know that this is very sensitive. You know what I mean? Like right here, like this is if you're gonna chop someone's head, obviously this is very it's open, right? But the other open spot is right here in all the organs. That's the
Yeah.
other obviously open spot. You
Yeah.
know
But
what I
like,
mean?
I mean, your core strength is destroyed. Like literally your core is like wrecked, and then you gotta like get it, like knit it back together,
Yeah.
basically. So I find that
Yeah.
interesting. I don't
Yeah,
know.
dude, if your core is fucked up, you can't even get out of bed. You don't have the empowerment to even get out of bed. Think about that one. Like that speaks like kind
Relates
of
to
volumes.
here,
Yeah.
mental capacity.
Yeah. That
Hmm.
speaks volumes, I think. Speaking of like all that with like the ego and so on my story online, I'll put sometimes either a tarot card of the day or lately it's been a rune. And then today the rune that I put up was Manaz. And it's freaking hella funny because so here it is. So it looks like a little M with like some like little triangles that kind
Mm.
of are kissing or something, but it's
Or
like an
like
M.
two peas like looking at each
Yeah,
other.
yeah,
Yeah.
like and so its keywords is man, okay, identity, self-realization, the inner being, soul. So here we go, soul, inner being, self-realization. How I talk about that after the push and pull of the sacral, you start to realize where do you stand with this? How does my ego feel about it? And you start to
Mm.
kind of build your criteria on yourself. And then there you are, you're a man or you're a person. You know what I mean? Human. It has human here. Yeah, it's a
Yes.
trip. It says, I guess I'll read it real quick. So besides those keywords, Manaz represents the basic human qualities we all have, shared experience. And then symbolically, stands for social order, allowing us to reach our fullest potential. So that's like that pride. Because without that, you're not going to like, you're not going to be gung ho about your work or like whatever you do. You know what I mean? Because, like, especially for me, like growing up, like I had a lot of that missing and then so I had a lot of confidence missing, a lot of pride in myself, like because I was so people pleasing, I was more invested in their shit, which is fucked up to say now, but you got to come full circle, and that's where I was. And then so I'm keeping it real with that. Yeah, and it's a trip, and so that's how it goes. And then you build your stuff, and then like I said though in the beginning of my little spiel, that if you overdo that though, your ego, you're gonna have a big fat ego, and then you're gonna consume, you're gonna be a consumer, and then so you're gonna get sucked in whatever your ego thinks is a part of it. You'll be all about it way too much. Like it'll be dangerously consuming like
Consuming,
whatever
yes.
your ego is into, whether it's whatever, it could be anything that your ego is into.
I wonder if that's like why fire is associated with
Yeah.
it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
consumed. You'll be consumed by the fire, and then the opposite, like how I was a lot with the lack. You'll be super like unmotivated, uninspired, no pride in my work, feeling like lost, like that whole shit, like crumbled, like you know how if your core is down, you're just like a crumbly puppet, like you have no, you know,
No,
and
for real.
Yeah.
yeah, and then so
Pinocchio
there's
and shit.
yeah, so there's both spectrums. So there's both spectrums to let you know that there's a balanced way to go about the ego. You know what I mean? Because we're not in those
Yes.
caveman times where we're getting chased by a lion, where we hella need this stuff on a different level. Like we're here now, and then we've learned things about ourselves, and we've gone through stuff, and so it's a part of the process.
Yeah. No, I even like I even say all the time. I think that's why Leo is associated with the sun on the tree of life, is because that's more of a focus. It's not of a combustion. It's not like Aries that is just like a big bang. It's more of
Yeah,
a focused type of fire, I guess. It's not so
yeah,
all over the place. Like you kind of have your purpose and you know what you need to do. I think
yeah.
in a way
Like
like that.
that's why, like in our planet series, when I had talked about shit, what the fuck was it? Well, pretty much for the yellow, for the solar plexus stuff, it was all about like it was a divine will. It was like, as opposed to regular will, which is like the base, like the first chakra. That's like regular will, like very primal, like oh, if I want to sniff you like a dog, then like it's a primal will, right? But then later on you get refined, like almost kind of like regal. Oh, and think about that, regal, like Leo is like very royalty, like a royalty
Yeah.
version.
You
of
see it on a lot of family crests, I think, that Royal.
Well, and like
Or Lotus.
lions and suns, it's all like Apollo, like sun
Yeah.
imagery, you know, shining. Like the Sun King was Louis the 14th, like all that kind of stuff.
No, okay,
Right.
that's cool. Yeah, yeah. And then I keep thinking about that whole threefold path with the yellows in the middle, and that's the equilibrium. It's like it figured out the balance between the red and the blue. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I think too, this chakra, the solar plexus, is a bridge between like the physical and the astral body, like you guys are saying. But when it is out of balance, like yeah, it's excessive fire, but not the same as like an Aries fire. What
Yeah,
you're
it's not like
saying.
it's not like when NY gets pumped up. You know, when you get pumped up and you start exploding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the Aries
Not
fire.
like
when
that.
it's out of balance, like just from what I researched a little bit before the show, like you can be angry and aggressive and either controlling or victimizing yourself. So either one. And then, like you were saying, Louis, a lack of direction and a lack of self-esteem when it's out of balance.
Well, it's even like, I guess, I mean, I guess probably with lions for the most part, do they kill because they want to, or they kill because they have to? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, most
Interesting thought.
animals actually are more tame than we are.
Yeah, that's
I hate
the,
to say
that's
it,
the
but
primal
like,
world.
you know?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's the primal world. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, so it's like, you can do it, but you only do it if you have to.
Mm,
It's not like you're going to flaunt it and just do it because you can. You know? Then you end up like Bundy or...
God.
so I got one more room.
Oh, yeah,
that-
that's right. Yeah, do that, and then I have some notes I want to cover.
Yeah, I got
forgot,
one
so-
more room. That so we saw Manaz or Manath, and then so it pretty much everything that I said it was like spot on. I was like kind of surprised. So this one, I'm gonna show you guys this one. It looks like a little. It's kind of like an X. Oh shit! Can you guys? It's such a. There we go.
There.
I have my notes.
It kind of looks like it's like an X, but kind of like
Oh, it looks like
diagonal,
cross almost.
Like cross.
Yeah,
it's like a diagonal cross.
kind of diagonal
Yeah.
cross. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a diagonal cross.
Mhm.
So
You know what's
it's,
wild? If you think that you're looking at the cross from sideways, it actually looks like fucking pretty crazy looking.
It's like 3D.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's oh sheesh, Nathiz, and it represents need. It symbolizes restriction, conflict, willpower. How we're going over that, endurance, and self-reliance. So I really resonate with the self-reliance part, and then the willpower, and then the willpower one. Yeah, because that's where, yeah, like when you establish the willpower for yourself, that's that one.
Mm.
Yeah. And then I guess endurance, that makes sense too, because we're talking about core workouts. And then if you don't have a strong core, you won't be able to play your sports. You won't be able to do your dance, do your workout. You know what I mean? It starts with the core. Like they tell you, like say if you go to a personal trainer, okay, well, we're going to start doing core workouts, or maybe some people will have you do body weight stuff, but pretty much no matter where you came from, like the core is like a priority for sure. And then that's how you
Holds
build
everything together, right?
yeah, that's how you build your stuff up, like for endurance. Yeah, so so that's that one for the runes.
Very nice.
Mhm.
So I do have some things I was just going to go over real quick, like associations, and then I do have a couple of things I wanted to read, and if you guys want to add anything to what I'm reading, go for it. But,
Yeah, fuck yeah.
For right now, we have just the associations real quick. The Sanskrit name Manipura. You want to say that?
Manipura chakra.
Yeah, you sent me.
You did good, NY. That was
Yeah,
good.
it was great. Good
Yeah.
job.
Meaning, and this can be, I'm sure, up to debate. There's probably so many different, technical meanings. Illustrious gem. Location, navel to solar plexus. Element, fire. Outer form, plasma. I find that interesting.
Ooh.
Function, will, power, assertiveness. Inner state, laughter, joy, or anger. Malfunctions. I wasn't going to read this, but you did mention it before. Ulcers, diabetes, hypoglycemia, and digestive disorders.
Yeah.
The color is yellow. The sound is ram, which is interesting. Vowel sound, ah, as in father. Petals, 10. Tarot suit could be wands. This I find interesting, and sometimes, the person who wrote this book, I do assume is a magician. And I do find this interesting because it's like, is this like kind of like, not sleight of hand, but like, the Sephira they're associating with this with is Hod and Netzach. Now, I can understand that, but like thinking about it on the tree, Hod and Netzach is actually below the sun. And the planets that this person associates this with is Mars and the sun. Mars, I kind of understand. But the sun, like to me, like I just don't understand why they're saying Hod and Netzach. Because it's like, the sun is the combination of those both. So it's like, do they not want to say it like, you know what I'm getting at? It's like, you probably could have, like, why did you separate that? Like,
Yeah.
But is it like a way of like I see how, in my opinion, going up the tree, you would take Hod and Netzach, and the beauty and the balance of those would get you to the sun. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but who is normally going to think like that?
Yeah.
Just reading this for like the first time or getting into this stuff. Doesn't even know what the Kabbalah is. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, with no explanation, it's like you probably are going to confuse people or mislead them if they don't understand what you're probably really saying there. I know planetary and the Kabbalah, I know like the sun and I think Mars do kind of like switch their angels. They don't match the same. But even the archangel that is associated with this chakra in this book that I go by does have Michael.
Yeah.
And it does have the chief operating force is combustion. Again, would go a long way, I guess, with fire and gas spirits. And then there's some Hindu deities: Agni, Sarah, Lakini. I'm probably screwing these up. Bridget, Athene, Helios, Apollo, Apis, and Ra. One thing I do want to add real quick, and I think like what I was even getting at before with why, I thought that saying Netzach and Hod was like kind of like a deep thing to say without really expanding on it and can screw people up. When you like, if there's people who are like, getting these books or have these books where it shows all these associations, it could also be showing you, just like what I think is with the chakras, going up and coming down. So you could have a list of deities, and some of them you could be like, they seem so far off. It's because it's like one at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You're looking at like this person is maybe a little bit too much of this conservative other god that is associated with it, because maybe that one's to an extreme.
Yeah.
So like I think people I just want to throw that in, like when people like, because I'm reading off associations I'm getting out of a book that's associated with this stuff. When you have those books, just don't just assume that they're all like the same. One could be a way of showing you the good thing about it, and one could be showing you the bad thing about it, and they're just not specifying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even
It makes
sometimes I
sense.
think that's why people get stuck up when they're doing shadow work, stuck with their shadows.
Yeah.
Is because they misinterpret something.
Yeah, because I think like I guess I think of like Kundalini, because Kundalini isn't necessarily some like like I'm vibrating forever, like
I've said before, it's not that the video that you see posted on Instagram all the time of like Kermit the Frog dancing. No, that's not what happens when you experience fire.
I love that.
Oh my God. It's like, yo, if you actually had a magical experience, you're going to be sitting there being like, did I just lose my fucking mind?
Yeah,
You're not going to be happy.
Yeah,
not for a few days, probably.
Yeah, because I've had the feeling of like, oh my God, I'm like Neo in the Matrix. And then I've also had the opposite of like, oh my God, I'm 5150. Where's my straitjacket? Like seriously.
Yeah,
like,
at least the first time, the first time you're going to be like, yo, did I just lose my mind?
Yeah.
You guys are
And then
funny.
so I guess sometimes you have to lose your marbles in order to pick them back up, I guess.
It's like that game. That's what it's all
Yeah.
about, right?
Some shit.
You do. Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find yourself, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
but I
Thank you.
can see it. Honestly, I can see this chakra so much in like because I have a personal history with like disordered eating, and I can totally see it just in like myself or like people I know who have different problems. But like in one way, like anorexia, bulimia, that's like a control. Like you want to control your environment, so you're trying so hard because you feel you can't control anything, so you control your food intake. And the
Yeah.
opposite, when you binge eat, it's because you feel out of control and you
Mhm.
have no way to deal with that except to just like then cover everything by
Yeah.
disassociating with food. So it's like it's very much connected to like that chakra, right?
Yeah, and like when you said that, I had the thought or the whatever of like the when you said control, like
Mhm.
I I thought like you're like those people, like people are edging control in some kind of way with how they can with their ego. And then just like how Wayne Dyer said, it's like he gave the acronym or whatever for ego as edging God out. So with sometimes
Ooh.
with this, when you're on extreme levels or on extreme sides of your solar plexus, you're going to be edging
Yeah.
shit. And then so sometimes you can either be cutting corners, like trying to cheat and get away, or you cut them too hard where you're going so hard on yourself and super overbearing and super like, oh, I'm gonna control it so much, like tighten
Yeah.
it up so much. And so yeah, it's like the levels of edging yourself and edging the universe, you know.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Let me.
it's funny that you mentioned the pedals, right? Because like I talked about this in an old episode, like of one of my old solo ones of like the technology is all within us, like how people say, the 144,000 and we're the chosen ones and this and that. I'm like, no, there's no, in my opinion, there's not going to be 144 exact number of people. If you just think about it, it sounds a little bit off. Like, why would there be a specific number where like these are symbolic representations of the lotus petals, you know what I mean? And then when you add them all up, that's the 144,000. So the technology is all inside of you, you know what I mean? The grand temple is here, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, I
so
often think that number is just like a mathematical equations or something. Actually.
Yeah, I'm sure
it's
it
for the
is.
lotus petals. It's for the lotus petals. When you add up all seven, it comes out to that exact number.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Ooh.
so the meaning of the 10 petals for this one, it has 10 petals, how you mentioned, spirituality, ignorance, thirst, jealousy, treachery, shame, fear, disgust, delusion, foolishness, and sadness. So it's interesting. Yeah,
Fun list.
I think about fool, like the fool a little bit with the solar plexus. Like in my office, I have the fool hanging up there, and then there's like a big old sun right behind him. You know what I mean? And then so it's like there's something to that too. You know what I mean? 'Cause there's a good fool and a bad fool. The
Oh,
bad
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the bad fool is ignorant, and then the good fool is like willing to embark on something new with like a humble attitude. Like, okay,
Yes.
like let's like do a fresh start or willing to start fresh and to embark on new adventures humbly or whatever. Yeah. It's like when your solar plexus is balanced, responsible, reliable, healthy self-esteem, playfulness, sense of humor, and you're able to make decisions and meet challenges. So that's like you're very assertive, right? So that's like balance. Imbalance will be low self-esteem, like how I grew up a lot. Lack of self-trust, right? You don't know who to trust. Weak will, your will is weak. That empowerment is very low, right? Poor digestion, victim mentality. Oh, okay, I didn't know about that. And unable to take on responsibility. So, yeah. So I guess that's like a pride thing. Like that's why like lately, like the last couple of years, I was like, no, it's like I need more ego. For so long, like especially with that A Course in Miracles shit, I was like trying to kill my ego so bad, and then later on, I realized I was like, oh no, wait, I think I need more ego. like,
Yeah.
like I need to feel like I need to show it off more. I need to fucking have a pride in myself, like stand up for myself. Because if not, people are gonna keep walking all over me. They're gonna keep sucking my energy, and then I'm not even gonna be thinking about it. And then that's why now I'm all about these goddamn boundaries because I'm realizing
Yeah.
just how much this shit happens. Like if some people call it spiritual warfare, it's some people would call it the energy, the vibes, or just reading between the lines, whatever the hell you want to call it. But that shit's there too. And then so it's like you have to. The more you don't stand up for yourself, the more you're gonna encounter these situations. Some people might even feel like they're like NPCs. Like, how come I parked in this parking lot and this one motherfucker, like, he has this whole parking lot and he's gonna park right next to me and stare at me? You know what I mean? Like, it's because my energy, my solar plexus was on the low side, and then so I'm attracting this shit, I'm vibrating this shit out, and then my aura is, going with it. And so yeah, so like here's where you make the decision, because the first chakra, how we talked about, it's hella primal. Like, dude, like if a dog wants to smell another dog's butt, there's no choice. That shit just happens, right? Like that is what it is. That like there was no choice. Then the other one with the sacral, there's an abstract nature to it. That's why it's a push and pull, and like you don't know what's pushing and pulling. It's just you in the universe, but it could be anything. So it's abstract. So after that, you finally get to the end of the physical chakra, and then that's where you can start to detail and plan your shit accordingly. And then hopefully you make a good plan. You know what I mean? Like harnessing your ego and your energy.
I have it kind of goes along with a lot of the stuff that we were mentioning throughout the whole thing, really, with this chakra that I have here that I want to read, because it does really go along with a lot of stuff that we were talking about. The initial task of the third chakra, this is according to the book I'm getting out of, is to overcome inertia in physics. Inertia refers to the tendency of an object to remain in the state it is in, either in motion or at rest, unless acted upon by some other force. In the third chakra, we will combine the forces of stillness and movement, earth and water, each shaping the other. The momentum of a golf club hitting a stationary ball will get the ball moving. A catcher's mitt held still will stop a ball in flight. Our will combines holding and moving in a way that directs action and shapes our world. The hardest part is getting started. Once we get a fire going, it burns more easily, only needing to be stirred and fed. Once we get a business started, we then use its returns as fuel to keep it productive. Once we overcome inertia to the point where energy is produced easily, the third chakra kicks in and begins producing power with less effort and will. Doing something with ease and grace is for the mark of true power. Moving, I mean, I even think again that's even more of going back to like how I was trying to get at with like Leo, with more of like a focused kind of like energy.
Yeah.
And even next in the book right here, it says a moving object, when it interacts with other objects, creates heat, just like you start to sweat while you're doing your dancing. Heat in turn stimulates movement, which allows new combinations to occur. Particles collide and combine. States of matter are changed. The molecules may bond to other molecules. Solids change to liquids. Liquids change to gas. Flour and eggs become cake. Fire is the transforming influence that can destroy, form, and release energy. The sun produces heat and light through nuclear fusion. Its heat is so extreme that the hydrogen nuclei are propelled into each other with enough force to overcome their mutually repelling electrical charges and fuse into slightly less massive helium nuclei. I do think that's interesting.
Shit, dude.
Yeah,
this book is good. Fuck.
I do think it's interesting how I do like how it says that like eventually they overpower. Kind of like, I mean, even think about it like when you're moving up, it's like, you would be going against gravity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I like how it does kind of include that there. And it says the difference in a mass is converted to pure energy, which generates more heat and movement, thus perpetuating the whole process. Nuclear fusion requires a gravitational field strong enough to act as a container and create sufficient density for the process to be self-generating. Once again, we see how gravity, the force of chakra 1, gives rise to movement. Chakra 2, resulting in the energy, the force. I fucked that all up. Sorry. Once again, we see how gravity, the force of chakra 1, gives rise to movement. Chakra 2, resulting in energy, the force of chakra 3. The energy then keeps the whole cycle running.
Yeah.
The chakras are all interdependent facets of a basic unified field of consciousness. They do not act separately and can only be separated intellectually. Likewise, we cannot separate energy from movement, and more than we can separate it from mass. Mass, movement, and energy mass, movement, and energy are three inseparable qualities of our physical world. The first three chakras represent a trinity of fundamental principles regarding our physical bodies and all matter. Together, they form a dance of cause and effect, which I think is why I was saying before, if Netzach and Hod had a dance at the bottom of the tree going up, part of that would, at some point in that dance, I think you would get to the sun. So that's why I even sometimes like to use like a dance of energies. That's all I think you're seeing with the tree a lot.
Yeah.
Another thing that I want to just...
That's a good book. Fuck, you got to share that with me.
I'll
very well written. Yeah, it's like I think about like it's like also saying it's like the ultimate equilibrium buster. You know what I mean? Because how you said on the second chakra, there's like feeling the force. The force is the push and pull, but you can't almost like you can't tell what it is. All you know is that me and not me, but there's like a force pull. You know what I mean? And then the solar plexus is like the ultimate equilibrium buster. And I think that's why later on it becomes like the high king. You know what I mean? Because like the first king is kind of like Aries, but it's almost like Aries is so fucking like so much, like so volatile in a way that it can't hold it like it needs like the refinement of like something like regal. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I can even see how like
later.
Even on the tree, like you do have like the prince at the bottom, and then like Mars, or I guess we go along with Aries, that's going up the tree. But then to the other side, like then going up again, you'll have the king. So I can see how like the prince needs that. It needs a little bit more of I guess a passion to like really to become the king or a man, you know what I'm saying? But it needs to be balanced, you know what I'm saying? You know, you're not gonna like you'll win the people over if you seem to be doing the right thing, not if you're just like randomly killing people because you like to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can out of fear, but then that's not like, you know.
Yeah, and
not
the right
there's
something
way
to like the baby in tarot with like the sun card. Like there's something to that too. You know what I mean? Because like, why did y'all pick a baby? You know what I mean? Like it's not exactly for the innocence. Like maybe because it's like still like growing, like it's in the beginning of its growth stage.
Yeah, see, I always associate, you know, a small child is associated with Tiferet. And I do think going, you know, where that aligns again with the sun in the middle of the tree, I do think a small child, it, you know, depending on how you want to look at it. Well, one, I do think children are a little bit still more connected or not as much tainted by the horrors of humanity. So I do think like there may be a little bit more connected to the spirit world, or even have more imagination still. Maybe that's not so much of imagination, but it just perceives the world for more of what it is. But even in the Kabbalah, the way I look at it, if you're going back into spirit, I do think there is symbolism to show you actually going backwards in growth of, I guess, your physical life. So, like, I could see myself going back to a child, then, you know, going back to birth, and then going back to spirit. So I do think that sometimes a small child is just like literally showing you going back in time as well, spiritually.
Yeah, like doesn't like in religion, or like didn't Jesus say like something like, well, like to get to heaven, like you need to be like innocent children, and like how like everyone says, oh, like those are the good old days because you had like your innocence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that purity. Because in reality, I mean, the first three, even though they're physical and like they're fiery, they're still like they're like the pure ones in a sense, because those are the ones that you can't help. How like a little kid can't help, but like sometimes like a little kid will say some like off the wall shit, but it was purely innocent. Like why does your hair look like that? Why is your hair so curly? Like why is it? And like to an adult, you'd be like, oh shit, you said that to them. You know what I mean? Like why are you wearing that? But but to them, like that, like it was pure. Like they didn't mean it. Like it was pure. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's some,
Well,
yeah.
also kids are full of energy, right? Kids are just inertia in motion
Oh yeah,
constantly. You
yeah,
know, their mind is just bugging out. They
yeah,
can't sit still. They are literally like balls of fire.
yeah,
I have two more things, and then I think we'll just move on to the next one.
yeah.
If I have like 2 or 3 more pages. Two of them touches on the will. This one I do want to mention because I do think it points out Leo again, and there is something I kind of want to mention about Twin Peaks. At Manipura, force and form combine and evolve each other to higher and more efficient levels. Once the third chakra flame has been lit, the fire is less difficult to maintain. Again, I think that kind of goes back to Leo again. Once the light of understanding has dawned, the path to further understanding is illuminated. When Kundalini rises to this chakra, she makes herself apparent. Here she kindles the fire to destroy ignorance, karmic traps, and physical impurities. It is at this chakra that Kundalini begins to burn. There is Twin Peaks Season 3. For anybody that watched the Twin Peaks series with us or is a Twin Peaks fan, there is scenes when he shows, David Dale Cooper shows up like in this box thing. And there's like this lady sitting in chairs and sitting in front of a fire. I do think he could possibly be showing this. Because like it's 2 different women at 2 different times just sitting in front of a fireplace on a chair. And I think like kind of something like this is what he's actually getting at.
Mm-hmm.
In talking about will, the distinction is often made between will and true will. If you do what someone tells you to do, if you do what someone, you know what, and you know what's funny? I there's going to be a few things that I'm going to read out of this book. And I'm not trying to like promote this person either who did this book. I don't think they're a member of the OTO, but this book actually was suggested a lot by people in the OTO. And it's just mind-blowing how some of the things I'm going to read, I just don't understand how, like if they suggested this book, did you ever once read it? But in talking about will, the distinction is often made between will and true will. If you do what someone tells you to do, when you really would rather not, you are still exercising your will, but deep inside it is not your true will. You have essentially given your will over to another. To get it back, we must realize we have chosen to do this and examine the reasons for that choice. Why did I hand over my will? What the fuck is wrong with me that made me do that? Are we trying to please? Are we scared of the consequences? Are we out of touch with ourselves? How can we address these issues? So I think that's important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good.
I have just because I have my notes up, I'll just run off some of this. I'll run off some of the associations, and then we'll go into Chakra 4, and then I'll read my notes at the end. Real quick, just going into that one, and then, like I said, after this, then I'll let you take over, Louis, after I just go over these associations.
Yeah.
Chakra 4 can be associated with love, air, breath, balance, relationship, affinity, unity, healing. Teresa, would you like to pronounce the Sanskrit name for that?
Anahata chakra.
Yeah.
Gesundheit.
Yeah. The meaning is unstruck, location, the heart, element, air, outer state, gaseous, function, love, color, green. The sounds for it I find interesting. Lamb.
My initials. Those are my initials. LA.
Oh shit!
No way.
That was Crowley's boy too. Lamb.
And I'm the Venus guy. I'm like the Venus guy. So that's funny that it's lamb and all this shit.
The vowel sound is A as in play. Petals is 12. The tarot suits could be swords. See, now this one, I mean, I guess I partially can agree with it. Sephirah is Tifereth. Again, like, without going into it, it just doesn't make, the celestial bodies now they have is Venus, which is, not, that's on a totally different sphere, so. But I can get it. Metal, copper, that I understand. And I do think it's interesting, just, you know, as energy's being built up too, as you're going up the tree, in my opinion, as you're going up the tree, the metals that are really good for conducting electricity also start going up the tree. You know, because copper, you know, isn't you know, is pretty good, and then we start going to gold, which is even better. You know, corresponding verb. I love sense, touch, yoga path, bhakti yoga. And then other pantheons could be Aphrodite, Freya, Pan, Eros, Mot, Isis, Shu, and Archangel, Raphael, and chief operating quality. You know, and I could see this too, again, actually making sense. You know, not counting the stomach, which maybe I guess the stomach has already been taken out at this point. But the equilibrium, like I was saying before, I do think there is something to do with magic where you do have to get your heart and your brain connected. The chief operating quality would be equilibrium.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, if it's starting to talk about, like, balancing out up here now.
Yes.
And it's
Yes. Because you have the core, which is like your stabilizer. Like, you know how, like, when you do martial arts and you're like, okay, horse stance or whatever. And like, that's like very core based. So like if someone tries to push you off, you're not going to get pushed off. So that's like to hold you down. And then after that, then you start establishing these connections with this other equilibrium, which is the brain, or like your mind and your heart. That's like the second equilibrium, like that. For the solar plexus, we kept talking about self-esteem, right? And then for me, a big lesson growing up that took me forever to start to get was self-worth. And the self-worth comes after the self-esteem. So here in the heart is the self-worth, because like loving yourself is the greatest love of all. And then once you can do that, you know how to have boundaries and relationships with others, because the beginning of the relationships of duality was in the solar plexus, right? But I keep saying it's abstract. And then once you get past the abstract relationship of dualities of the solar plexus, you get to the relationships of here where it's not abstract, it becomes detailed. So here I have a detail of a relationship with my podcasting friends. I have a relationship with my family, with my coworkers, with my dog, with blah, blah, blah. That it gets to be detailed. So it's like a relationships of the details of that. And then when you have the love in you, like when your heart chakra is good, you're able to have compassion, understanding, and then even the concept of forgiveness accordingly. You know what I mean? Like that's where you can be able to establish those concepts. Yeah.
Very well said. Very well. You know, and I think, like, you know, in this one, even like some of the notes that I have for it, this chakra, I do think, again, is like a good way, I think, to show the vice and the virtue again. You know, at some point, you know, it's talking about like love is associated with this chakra. I do think there is a point where you will start to leave or let go of love for earthly things and more of love for spiritual sustenance than earthly sustenance.
Yeah, it can go
And
from sensual to spiritual.
yeah, and I think like that I think it almost kind of really shows like make if you didn't feed into the ego and to the prior, like now I like that's like I think is what's going to show you propelling, you know, going farther up, is that, you know, now the next thing up, since you let all that shit go, is that like you're letting go of like the attachments as well.
Yeah,
You know, if you haven't been feeding your ego with bullshit, you're also letting go now more of physical attachments and things to this, you know, reality.
Yeah, and like just how you said propel, I think about I've said before, like the heart chakra is like the springboard to the rest of the shit out there in the cosmos. Like especially for me, I consider this like for when I die. I'm okay with dying, and I'm prepping myself in a sense for when I do die. And then that's why I want to make sure that my heart is good. You know, that's why even like the Egyptians were like having that thing about Anubis or whoever, that they take you in and they measure your heart. They want to make sure that your heart is like as light as a feather. You don't want to go in there with a heavy heart to the spiritual realms. And then so the first three is the physical chakras. The fourth chakra, the heart, is a hybrid, the springboard, the stepping stone between the physical and then the spiritual. And then that's why a lot of the fucking bullshit that we see out here in the world, it's a byproduct of people skipping the springboard, skipping the beginning of the spirituality, and they try to just get all analytical, and then that is pure ego, like super duper ego. You know what I mean? Like unhealthy, like super duper ego. And so yeah, so we're witnessing this shit play out in the world too as well. You know what I mean? Because some people want to skip steps, and then there's a process, and then there's a reason why there's orders to shit. You know what I mean? Like there's orders for a reason. It's to give you a plan. It's to give you a layout, a blueprint. You know what I mean? Like it's not out of like thin air.
And you had like a springboard. And I do find that as like being the vice and the virtue, or a push and pull, which I find funny. And I'm going to read this right here, and then you can go on. But the heart chakra is the center of love, as spirit and matter are combined. Shiva and Shakti are united within the heart. Now, even going back to male and female, one is projective, one is receptive. Shiva and Shakti could just be boiled down to push and pull, which is exactly what's going on in your heart.
Yeah.
Shiva and Shakti united within the heart. In their external dance of creation, their love radiates throughout all existence, giving it the permanence that allows the universe to continue. I mean, if your heart didn't keep pushing and pulling in this nice, beautiful dance that it's doing, it's not going to radiate anything to the rest of the body either. So, but I do find, like, I think that is very, that's why I do think, like, some things can even be, like, what you were saying, like a springboard. I even think the fact of, like, the heart being associated with the chakra and the way I pointed that out can even show you the push and pull.
Yeah, and then exactly, and then like I'm thinking in my head, just like how you go on a swimming pool, like like the little where you spring onto the pool, you know what I mean? You have to actually jump and put pressure on the floor in order to get enough momentum to get the hell out of there. And then the bigger move you want, like the deeper you want to go, and like the more you want to fly, the harder you have to push in first.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's like this is where there's like it's like a hybrid. That's what I said, of the physical and the spiritual, because
So
the further you want to go out in the spiritual world, you have to push in the most right here in this spot. Like that one game. What was that one game where you go that board game?
Oh, Trouble?
Yeah, like there's like a dice in the middle, and there's like a little globe,
or like Boggle or whatever.
Yes, I love that game as a kid.
No, sorry, it's called.
Yeah,
well, the Trouble had it too.
The old school board game, and you go. So it's like the heart is like that, where as opposed to the core you do that, but you don't come back up. The core, you just lock it in. How my boy told me to lock it in. He's just like, for the core, for the solar plexus, all you do is just once, and then for the heart you got to go, and then the harder you push it in, the more you can springboard out and then go wherever you want to go. So that's why I make the heart like a priority, because I try to dive deep and hard into my heart in a sense, and that way I could feel free to go to wherever the fuck I want to go afterward.
Yeah, well, I think it is the chakra integration and manifestation. So being the bridge between the lower and the upper, that's why the symbol is the two triangles, the downward triangle and the upward triangle, to make like the 6-pointed star. Because like you're saying, it's Shiva and Shakti, male and female energy together within your heart center.
Yeah.
So, and I always used to say that when I would teach yoga is, you have to root down to rise up. So the further you ground, the more you can project up as well.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if you think like how we're even explaining this now, this is why I was even saying to both of you, and it's something I hope to get to at the end of this series, why I do think you can actually fold this chakra in half and kind of like overlap them. is because I really do think this is like the bridge between and like.
This is the middle.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And there's certain symbolism. I think that if I get to it
No,
at the end, you'll see how like.
you're so right.
And even with like magical symbols, how if you were to fold that in half, how you will. I mean, I could explain sex magic that way symbolically. So.
Yeah. No, well, like what we're saying, we're actually telling like a story that like before you do this, you need to get your internal needs met, like the root. And then after that, you start to discover the beginning of this duality, which is the next. And then after that, then you get to refine yourself and decide your character. Like you can't have one without the other. Like they're stepping stones upon themselves. Like it's like telling its own beautiful story.
Oh,
And then that's why I believe this stuff. Like, and it's helped me out in my life because I'm like, okay, well, what's this problem here? Well, how do I get to the root of that? Do this. Okay, well, what got in the way of that? This. So I'm like playing like a detective game with myself, and I'm figuring myself out. Yeah. So real quick, I'll show you guys this one. This is called Gibo. Okay, so it looks like I think it's this way actually. It's like a wide X. The other one was like a cross, right? But this one is like a straight up X. So Gibo represents a gift. It symbolizes balance, exchange, partnership. See, generosity, relationships. So that's all the heart. Because the solar plexus was like a duality, but it wasn't in a relationship. It was just between self and non-self, or self and the universe. And this one is relationship, partnerships. And then there's that whole thing of like generosity, and like there's like the giving, the caring, the compassion. Like that's where all that shit comes from, that makes it that gives the partnership a foundation, like a really good foundation.
And how do you spell that again? I'm sorry.
Gebo, Gibo or Gebo. Fucking, I'm sorry to.
No, it's all right. It's just I had Helen, Helen from the Element. Everybody knows who she is. She was sending me stuff on like something I was kind of interested in covering in the future, and it was spelt very close to it. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was spelled Kibbo, Kibbo, but sorry. I was like, oh, is that the same thing? No. That's why I asked you. Could you spell it?
Yeah, and like when I was looking up the, because I didn't feel like doing tarot. I was like, oh, let me throw a rune, because today the rune was like kind of matching my shit for today anyway. So like, let me go with the rune concept. And then so when I was looking online, because the one that I showed you right now, that one to me was like the heart. You know what I mean? Like relationships, the whole nine, right? And then, but online it kept throwing out this one, Isa, which is
bring it up there.
It means like stand still. See how just like one little line, like it's just stuck right there. So it's like frozen, like ice. And then online it was saying like it could represent like the frozen heart, because like usually a heart is like a heart on fire, like you even see emojis with a heart with the fire around it. So this one's the opposite. It's like the frozen heart. And then it's clarity, stasis, challenges, introspection. So it's like an inverted, it's like a blue cold version of the heart. You know what I mean? How like the heart usually is out there, like I'm giving it out to you. This one is like a withdrawn heart that's like called the frozen heart. And then they even said that like it was tied to like Thor as well too. But so I kind of wanted to throw that one out there, like what I thought the heart with Gibo, and then this one Isa is like the frozen heart. So for the runes, that's kind of what I got for that. Yeah.
Nice.
That's interesting.
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna read off a few pages too after that.
Oh yeah.
The love we experience at the level of the heart chakra is distinctly different from the more sexual and passionate love of the second chakra, which we were basically saying. Sexual love is object-oriented. The passion is stimulated by the presence of a particular person. In the fourth chakra, love is not dependent on outside stimulation, but experienced within as a state of being. In this way, it radiates outward, bringing love and compassion to whatever comes into our field. It is a divine presence of empathetic connection, rather than an extension of our need or desire. Hopefully, through the force of the will, our needs have been fulfilled or transcended. Love can emerge within the deep sense of peace that comes from the lack of need, with a joyous acceptance of our place among all things. and the radiance that comes from the inner harmony. Unlike the changing nature of the second chakra with its transitory passions, love from the heart is of an enduring quality, eternal and constant. The element of the fourth chakra is air, the least dense of our physical elements so far. As an element, air is commonly associated with knowledge and things that are expansive and spirited. I do think one thing that I would just want to add with air, I mean, you can't see it. It's not like, it can rise, you add heat. Like adding fire and water together, you're going to get steam. I mean, that is kind of like air in a sense. And that would be the middle pillar also is air. Air represents freedom as in the birds that fly. Air represents openness and freshness, as in the airing of a room. Air represents lightness, simplicity, and softness. When we fall in love, we feel like we are walking on air. Air implies spaciousness, which is achieved through letting go. When we cling too tightly to what we love, we suffocate our beloved, which is like depriving them of air. We talk about needing space when we want room to breathe. And this is even a thing that I had mentioned before. I don't know I think it was recently. I brought up like the thing of like love and not that, no offense to you, Teresa, since you're a female. I'm just using motherly love as an example, but it could be fatherly love as well. At what point are you loving your child so much that you're actually really going against their will because you say it's what's good for you?
All the time.
Yeah, no, and I'm, parents did it to me. I'm sure I've done it to people I've been in relationships with. I didn't need to have a kid to manipulate someone like that. But, at some point, like, I think it even gets into that in this book, which is what I thought was another interesting point, with OTO people. At one point is love is love for the next person really encroaching on their will, actually. At some point you just have to let things be. Sometimes the true love for someone could just be letting them be who they are and not trying to change them.
Well, it's the saying, if you really love someone, you let them go, and if they come back to you, then they're really yours. Isn't that how it goes?
And like for me, I think about like harmony with this whole concept, and I think of like the Blavatsky shit. Take that with a grain of salt, but yeah. So with them, they have, instead of like 7 chakras, it's like 7 rays, right? And then the green ray, which is the 4th ray, the green ray, they call it harmony through conflict. So it's saying that you'll get harmony after the conflict. So first there's something here conflicting, like where you have to balance it out. That's why there's a balance and a lightness. And then that's why the Egyptian god Anubis will balance your heart on a scale to get the lightness of a feather. So after that, like balance war or whatever, then there's the establishment of a harmony. You know what I mean? Through all that stuff that you faced. You know what I mean? And that's why here, most of us, the biggest battles that we have is heart-based. And I've seen so many people get crushed, like with their hearts. You know what I mean? Like guys and girls, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like that one is a one that I've seen personally, that like once I see that one get crushed on someone, that was the one that like didn't bounce back. Like that one is the hardest to bounce back from, is like a broken heart chakra type of thing. That one takes the longest.
Like having a Christian background, I see a lot of integration of like Eastern and Western philosophies in the same religious practices. And I think that's why a lot of times you see Jesus depicted as like always touching his heart, or it's described as like the Sacred Heart of Jesus, because love is like the way through a lot of things in life. And if you have like a strong heart chakra, you can achieve a lot that way, and do what you're supposed to do spiritually, which is have compassion and empathy, a different kind of love than in the lower chakras. It's more righteous and selfless love. Yeah.
And like, I think it's like the beginning of like true expansion. You know what I mean? Like how NY was saying, like that's where you can like, it's like it'll like, how the universe is always expanding. Like that's like a love. That's like a love force.
I was even here, like you're talking about like the expansion and stuff. Here, the next thing that I was going to actually read, and this really goes along with that. Air, the gaseous state of matter, differs from any element we have discussed because it tends to disperse itself evenly throughout any space it occupies, except gases that are notably lighter or heavier than our average atmosphere. Blah blah. But I mean, I even think of I think is a perfect example of this. That's really showing some occult symbolism. If you were to take like a Catholic incense burner, one of those round ones, and put it in like a square box, when it was lit, it's gonna seep out and fill up that cube, all that air, but it's gonna fill up the room and leave the circle and go into the square.
Yeah, well, air, like you were saying, it surrounds us completely everywhere we go, and so does love.
Yeah.
So it goes together. Interestingly, doesn't copper oxidize and turn green?
Yes.
When exposed to air.
Yep. That's another thing. And again, with even though copper is good for electricity, and copper is associated with this chakra and is associated with Netzach or Venus. So would copper would go along with that as well. And just,
well, when I was
and
born,
green would go. So.
When I was born, like I had hella complications. Like I almost killed my mom because I didn't want to come out. And I was born blue. And then so think about that. Like Stuart Swirlow, he was like how people had their David Icke. He was my David Icke. And in the very, very early 2000s. And he had a book, one of his many books called True Blood, Blue Blood. And he's talking about all this shit. And I was like, damn, I feel like something with this. And then so I think about like even Venus too. And like there's something with that and the blood and then all that shit. And like there's something to that for sure with the copper thing. Yeah.
Well, blue being less, you had less oxygen. So the air factor again, right?
Yeah. And then that's why asthma, like the air is one of my things where like, like I've said it a million times. Like I first told the shaman Kristen, my friend, that I was like, eventually when I do die, it's going to be from a lack of oxygen. I'm like, well, whatever. It is what it is. Like everyone has their weakness, and then in your weakness is your biggest strength. So that's why when I've been exercising or practicing different magical techniques or things or whatever, I realized that besides fire that I like, I wouldn't be anywhere without like the breath and like how to manipulate breath. Like without that, I wouldn't be shit. And then
breath is life.
Yeah. And then so I realized, okay, well, in my biggest weakness is also my biggest strength, because that's how I can feel other realms or feel like I'm somewhere else basically in a sense, but I'm so clear. You know what I mean? Because like say in a meditation, people have certain goals, but I think it's really just about getting a clarity and like clearing yourself. And then so like you can't explain that. Like you can't be like, okay, well, I have less now, or I'm still thinking, because you're always still thinking, right? But there's like a thing about clarity that like you cannot take away, and then you feel so grounded. And then so that's pretty important, I think.
I have here, I want to keep going. Water sits at the bottom of the bowl. Earth stays rigid and fixed. Fire moves upward but always clings to its fuel. Yet air disperses. Incense burned on an altar gradually pervades the whole room. There is a sense of equilibrium, calm, and evenness. Likewise, the heart chakra reflects a kind of loving in regard to the complex interrelationship of all things. But here, like, I love how it, like, even with the incense again, like how you will see smoke disperse, it kind of like fills up or creates equilibrium. It's a good visual, and I think brings new meaning to the phrase, you don't smoke like I do. We don't smoke the same.
We don't smoke the same.
We don't smoke the same, to me, is saying exactly what the fuck we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes. No, You don't smoke like me because you're thinking lower.
Yeah.
And I'm actually practicing magic. So yeah, just want to toss that in.
Yes.
Lastly, air represents breath, the vital process through which our cells are kept alive. The Hindus call it prana, from pra, first, and na, unit. In yoga philosophy, prana is referred to as a vital energy in and of itself, a basic unit from which all life is made. This energy represents an interface between the physical world and the mental world. The mind, if it wishes to influence the body, can do so through control of the breath. Likewise, control of the breath can quiet the mind. Prana is considered a vital link between the two, just as the heart chakra is the integrator between upper and lower chakras. The heart requires an understanding and practice of balance between mind and body, inner and outer realms, self and other, giving and receiving. Opening the heart requires a transcendence of ego, allowing us to surrender to the forces larger than the self. Lastly, opening the heart chakra requires an understanding and control of the breath, for it is the tool of the physical and mental transformation. As between each of the chakras, the primary difference between the third and fourth is one of awareness. Through the creation and repetition of pattern, the organism becomes self-aware. Our lower chakra activity has influenced and created consciousness. We have acted according to our instincts and emotions, learning from our mistakes. Our learning becomes even more complex and is stored in the higher centers as concepts, memory, and logic, to descend downward again, where our consciousness can influence our actions.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, I got a little part here too. So when the heart chakra is balanced,
Mm-hmm.
you got compassionate, a feeling of understanding, right? I think like a lot of like understanding is so important, like when it comes to just like the experience of here, and then once like just with a simple understanding, like then you can start to really gain like wisdom, because you don't have to be super smart. It's just to understand truly what's going on, you know. But so anyway, so balance, you have compassionate, understanding, love of self and others, empathetic, you know, so that way you're not a sociopath and you might have to hex somebody, and inner peace, strong immune system. When it's unbalanced, you have disorders of the heart, lungs, thymus, breasts, and arms. Okay, I didn't know about arms. Premature aging. Oh, okay. You know how like time stands still? I guess I think about that. Like it'll be the opposite of that.
Mm.
Upper back pain, circulation problems, asthma, and immune system deficiency. So I also had my immune system like that was another thing of mine. So yeah, so me being like very Libra, very Venus person, it makes sense why asthma and allergies, my immune system has always been like a main thing that I've always had to work on for sure.
That's sorry to interrupt you, Louis. That's
Yeah, no.
interesting about the asthma thing. And like it just makes me think, that our heart chakra and our heart center is under attack a lot of the time by like, the powers that be. So I'm thinking, because my children also have like asthmatic issues and like skin stuff sometimes. And I'm like, it's often a byproduct of the traditional like jab system, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, is that a way that they've been attacking the heart chakra is through that? And then, by telling us to stay 6 feet apart and this and that. I'm like, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. There's something probably to that, because it takes away your power, your strength when you can't merge, because you get power when you unify. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because it's like people say,
Yeah.
like nowadays, I'll say, "Oh, soulmates. Oh, I love my soulmate," or "I need to find my
Like twin
love, my
flame.
soulmate." Yeah, and then but the thing is, though, like when I think of an actual soulmate, I think of like someone that you are on a ship with, in a sense, or like someone that you're rolling with. So it could
Mhm.
be a friend, it could be like any type of, just like someone that you're rolling with together, like they're your mate, like your partner.
the way you explained it, I think is perfect. Is like you're both rowing in the same direction, and for some reason, when it comes to the magic community, their twin flames could be beating each other with rows, and as long as they're twin flames, it's okay. That phrase in itself is like an excuse just to stay in a bad relationship nowadays.
Yeah, because
It
they're
is
like,
like become
oh,
a
well,
total mind fuck to just like I'm
dude.
throwing this word out so I can just still be abused.
Yeah, like I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, right now he's ignoring me and he's doing this to me, but it's because, but he's my twin flame, so it's just the way it is right now. He'll come back, like dude, like you're giving yourself excuses to take all this shit when like people are giving so much of their power away. I just want to help give the empowerment back. It's not that I don't want you to find love, because the thing is, though, from like little kids, people they get consumed with like, I need this fairy tale wedding, I need this fairy tale life. No, dude, you're in Earth. This is like a lower version of heaven or a higher version of hell. Like, you're not in that kind of fantasy world. Like, it's just not going to work out exactly how you hoped. You wish you saw a Disney movie or in a book, or it might happen like that, but God, it might certainly not at all. Like, here you do the best with what you got, and then you play the cards that you're dealt, and then you do your very best. And then from doing your very best, that's where the solar plexus of that pride of just, I'm going to just do my best with my pride. And then from there, the rest will kind of happen. And then the universe will put stuff in your lap, like, in a sense, like it'll be easy. Life will be easy. You don't have to fight so hard to keep a twin flame who is like abusing you or mentally like fucking you up. Like, you don't have to, you don't have to give your power. You don't have to give your power away so much. Like, there's nobody important more than you, in a sense. And then what people are doing is that they're giving their power away as if someone is better than them, or I can't be my true self without you. Like, no, that's bullshit. If you were going to give that to someone, it would probably have to be to God. Like, if you were going to play that game,
you should do that, yes.
Yeah, or yourself, yeah, at least. Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
from there,
else.
then you can love everybody accordingly, because I'm all about love, dude. I'm all about it. And then from there, you could find the true love, like I think there's nothing better than truth, because then you can find out who truly loves you. Then you can find out what your true love aspirations are. Like, like it'll help you get to the truth, and then that'll feel the best. You won't have to like suffer. Like, there's no need to keep suffering your way through this hopeful, well, I'm a hopeless romantic. You don't have to fight your way through that. You don't have to.
Hopeless romantic.
No. Well, it's like the Bible verse, 1 Corinthians, where it's well known, and it often at weddings, like, love is patient, love is kind, it does not boast, it is not proud. That's like the true love. So if you're, in a fucked up toxic relationship and you call it a twin flame just so you can stay, I mean, that's not real love, right?
Yeah.
So why would you want that?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, just how the universe is, there's no limit. There's, it's limitless. And then once you like you embody that for real by realizing who you really are, you know what I mean? Like the infinity of yourself. It takes a while.
There's all that dark matter to fill up.
Yeah, it takes a while. There's a lot of shadow work or whatever the fuck you want to call it, because there's a lot of beating yourself up or like getting put through the ringer.
It's maturity.
Yeah.
Learn the lessons. It's funny too. It's funny too that you said, like, Earth plane is like highest realm of hell and like lowest realm of heaven, and that's like where they meet. So again, it's the plane of integration, just like the heart chakra, and that's why it's green, just like the Earth.
Yes,
right?
Yes, because heart is the anagram for Earth. Yeah, like that's why here, like that's why I kind of like I'm not a big Blavatsky person with all the 7 rays, but the one that kind of makes sense a lot is the one of harmony through conflict, because after, like, here on Earth, like Earth is where there's the most conflict, right? So if you can get harmony through all this conflict, then that's when you can, after here, you can be free to go wherever the fuck you want to go, in a sense. Like, if you passed here, like, you can pass anywhere. It's like New York. You know what I mean? Like that's what it's like here. So we have a cool opportunity here, in a sense. You know what I mean? Even be able to face ourself or our shadow, whatever the fuck. Just face yourself, all the shit that comes with it, and then there's a big opportunity here that we might not know how big it really is until we die. You know?
I mean, I even think, to piggyback on something that one of you had said, if you put earth and water together, you're more than likely probably going to get something green growing up in there. And you put earth and air together, and you're more than likely going to get green stuff growing up. So
Yeah,
it does seem to be the color of maybe multiple elements having balance and beauty in between it somehow. You know?
yeah.
So very
Well, that's why
interesting.
I'm
Very
wearing
interesting to
like
bring
this
that up.
shirt in a sense, because blue and yellow is green. So you have to merge like it's funny too, because the ones where there's like a relationship of like push and pull, first there was orange, but orange is a mix of red and yellow. And then the other one is another mix of yellow, which is blue and yellow. So and both of those mixes have the dichotomy of where you learn about duality of like relationship or a self versus universe. You know, one is abstract, the other one is not abstract. You know, and then the equilibrium of the solar plexus is the one that guides which one that you're on, whether it's abstract or not. You know, yeah. Real quick, I got one like last little line. So
Okay.
when the heart chakra is underactive, you may feel shy, fear of getting hurt, feelings of loneliness, and being unloved. Right? See, suspicion, possessive, antisocial, judgmental, and fear of relationships. See, so that sounds like a lot of people who've gotten their hearts cracked, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
they don't want to come back out. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, you know, like I try to encourage friends that I've seen like this, like, no, it's okay. Like, throw it out there. When the heart chakra is overactive, you may be overly empathetic, overly concerned, jealous, have poor boundaries, codependency, clinging, and a tendency to stay in abusive relationships. Hence all this shit we're talking about. See?
Yeah. You mentioned it again. You mentioned the word again, and I had said it earlier. And I guess I'll wrap it up with this. If you're done, Louis, with your stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that was my little spiel
Then
right there. Yeah.
I'll wrap it up with this, and I think it's. I'm glad you brought up empathy again. Empathy. I mentioned it before. I do think, even with the heart chakra, you can easily screw yourself up, slipping out of it, with too much empathy becoming sympathy. I do think there is a big difference, and I do think that is actually a downfall. In a sense, if you go by the way society has been manipulated in the last 3 years, it has really been more out of sympathy for your next human than out of empathy. And that has controlled a lot of people, and they have handed over a lot of their wills through the manipulation of sympathy.
Straight up, and it's so subtle that's why the spell has been working for them for the most part.
Yes.
It's so subtle, man. Very subtle. All these things, like with chakras, are subtle energy works. It's very subtle. That's why I spent most of my day just thinking about one color, because I had to just hone in on it, hone in on the feeling, just feel it, because it's very subtle. And then it's like about reading the clues. How I said earlier, you got to be like a detective to finding like, oh, okay, well, if I have this and what, and you keep breaking yourself down, it's like you get little clues on yourself, and there's subtle clues. But if you keep following the trail, you'll be like a detective to find you'll solve the case eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just gotta follow the donuts and coffee, and you'll
Straight up follow the herbs on the floor, the grounded herbs, and it will take you to the promised land.
Very well said, man. Thank you. That's a great way to end it. Yeah, so that is the end of part 2 for the Chakra series. It'll be obviously 3, if not 4. I hope you are all getting something out of it. Again, if you had not listened to the first, I highly suggest to go back and listen to that. And I did also leave out, I also highly suggest to go back and listen to, if you haven't heard it, the Planetary series I did with Louis as well. That was a 3-part banger. It was actually something I really would have loved to have done on the Occult Rejects, but when you're married to somebody else, you're limited to doing things. And now I'm not, so I can do more stuff. So, but still, that was a great series with just me and him. If you have not heard it, go check that out. That's actually probably pushing like at least 8 months old now, probably. So it's a little bit.
Are you kidding me?
It's got to be at least 6 by now. So
yeah.
That's actually kind of an older series. So some people, new listeners, may not actually know of it. I have come across, and I'm not complaining. I have come across new listeners. Please, just hit scroll just a little bit, and you'll go back and see that I've actually covered topics you've probably asked me to cover, or you might actually be surprised that, oh wow, they have this much stuff. That's for the new listeners. When you go and look at the podcast, just fling up real quick and look at the other 100 shows I've done. So
we'll find out how the universe unfolds. There's more shit to it.
Yeah, I was starting to drop all the episodes, and somebody's like, I'm confused. What? This is old, and I was like, yeah. New people, but listen, I'm not being an asshole. I'm just being honest. I've done the same thing myself. If I find a new show, I'm probably not going to skim through 2 years of past shit. So, check out the other stuff that we've done. Some pretty impressive stuff that was not too recent, which is what I'm getting at with Louis. Check that out.
Not too long ago.
Well, I think it was long enough, right. Though. It feels like it. It feels like it's been a while.
I guess half a year. Fuck, time flies. That's cool.
Check that out. And Louis, real quick, if you'd like, drop your links again.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it, dude. So, Uncanny Mystic Minds podcast on all major platforms. The video is on Spotify, and then now I'm starting to branch out into dropping my things on YouTube as well. So I'm going to be employing more of that. And
go for it, man.
And IG is the same thing. Uncanny Mystic Minds. TikTok, I do that too. Louis_that11. And you can always inquire on my Gmail, which is on the link, if you ever want to talk about if you have any questions, or if you want to talk about getting on the show, that's cool too. So right on, man.
Awesome. And I'll have all your links in the bottom as well. And Teresa,
yes,
spiritual gangster.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on for this. It's always fun to talk about, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, people can check out more of me on the NY Patriot show, and also on the Spiritual Gangsters. So if you have not heard it, please check it out. It is great chats with the wide awake crowd. So it's nice. It's a good break though from super heavy stuff. I like hearing about people's personal stories, and
me too.
It's cool.
So do I. I really truly enjoy that.
Yeah, I always like to have like half of that or a third of that kind of stuff. I like.
It can't always be heavy, right?
You can get to know people on a personal level, personable and all that shit. Yeah.
Totally. And there's so many different people we've had on. There's something for everybody for sure. So
I think
people can check that out on all the major podcast platforms and YouTube. Soon Rumble.
Yes, we're gonna go. Rumble would be a lot easier just to upload censored stuff, so we're gonna switch from the BitChute and go over to Rumble. It's just because it takes bigger videos. If every time I make a video, I have to fucking handbrake it, I have to compress it for BitChute. It's so annoying because they only take a 2 gig video. It's if I want to do 720 or higher, it's impossible unless I compress it. It's come on, And it's honestly, the video program I use won't even go below 720 now. So it's I have to. So, so Rumble will take a 15 gig video, and you can live stream to it also. That's something I do. I do the free live streaming in case anybody who podcasts happens to listen to my show. Probably not, but most people think I'm an asshole on podcasting, so I'm probably not listening to my show. If you happen to use Rumble, the free live streaming, I don't know how long it's been available. I haven't checked recently, but that's out now. I live streamed to it one day this week, and I probably got the second highest views ever on Rumble. So I'm going to start live streaming more. Or I'm going to live stream there instead of Facebook. I really don't think more than 10 people were listening to it on Facebook. I'm sorry if you happen to catch this. I'm going to switch over to Rumble. But live streaming is available on there now.
I like the vibe on the live streams.
I like doing that for sure. And we got that. And I do also want to add, besides switching over to Rumble, all three of us are in the Element server as well. Whenever our stuff drops, the RSS feed drops, and you'll even see in the chat rooms that our stuff dropped. And there's probably 30 other channels and things to talk about besides us. So go check that out. The link is in the bottom. I think
Helen. Thank you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, they really set that up. There's even on the weekends. I mean, if you want, there's a group of people that jump in and basically use a room to have to talk, and if you can show the video if you want.
I gotta check
if not, they do that. We were doing watch parties. There's a lot of stuff to be done in there. I highly suggest people to check it out.
I gotta figure that shit out, man.
Yeah, I got my TikTok. I got a TikTok if you want to see shit posting. And I do just want to reiterate, there is a different Twitter I have. The link for that is in the bottom. Probably for the year and 11 months that I did the Occult Rejects, I countless times have shit on Elon Musk. So there is no way I gave him a check mark. There's no way I gave him $8 for a check mark. That fucking Twitter account's not fucking mine. All right. So the new one is in the bottom. If you're listening, that's not the used account anymore. A real person who's been shitting on Elon Musk would not go and hand him $8. So the new Twitter's in the bottom. And
there it is.
There it is. And until the next one, hope everybody is well. Later.